That scene that you reenacted with Richard is one of the great scenes from TV drama. We couldn't afford the clip, hence Richard doing it.
Yeah, Dirty Dick rather than Dirty Den, unfortunately. But we got there, didn't we?
Not for the best. I was slightly disappointed to see that you'd had your lines, Richard, written on the back of the envelope.
And I have revisited that scene so often, and we all remember being there that Christmas when 30 million people tuned in. You don't get those bums on seats anymore, right? No. Those were the days indeed. It was vintage. I know you don't get tired of reminding of it. Yeah, vintage. Such a compliment from the jaws of that. But it is one of the most iconic moments. But you've done so much more since then as well.
Now, this play, though, particularly, we were just nattering about it in the break. It's an extraordinary story, Anita. Just fill us in on the Shadow Factory.
Well, it's a story written by Howard Brenton about the Spitfire Factory that was bombed in the Second World War. So it all takes place in the 1940s. And it's about how they got the Spitfires up and running again. I mean, within 3 days of the bombing, which was devastating, they were making Spitfires again, and the boys were out flying them and winning us the war.
And it's where they were making the Spitfires, so the parts for the Spitfires, because obviously the factory had gone. So then the community gets together and then decides we're all going to do it ourselves.
The government requisitioned properties, garages, laundries, shops, houses, anything they could, and parts of the plane were made in different places and then all put together, taken to the airport. The planes were assembled and off they flew.
And who were making those parts in
everybody,
the garages?
I mean, people in our story, the laundry were making the washers, and somewhere else would be making something else, and then it all got taken down to the airfield. And
it's extraordinary because Southampton got a big battering, you know, during the war because of obviously being the home of making the Spitfires. Yeah. It's a fascinating tale. I'd never heard it before.
I hadn't. I mean, I knew about the bombing, but I didn't know, you know, exactly the whole story of what the people went through, you know, and how they got those Spitfires assembled.
And as an EastEnders veteran, you are now united in this play with another actor who has just emerged from the EastEnders stable. Yeah. Now, you've never acted before, obviously, together on EastEnders. No. But have you got advice for her as she comes out of that culture of being part of that EastEnders family?
This little girl doesn't need any advice. She's going to be fine. She's doing great. She's delightful, sunny, willing to learn. She's on it. I love her. She reminds me so much of me when I was younger.
Really?
She just wants to take it all in. So, yeah, the only advice I would give her is just to listen to her heart and always go with her instincts.
And stay out of your light. It's what I always tell the youngsters, Anita. Yeah, well done.
There is an element, though, isn't there? Because her character's just leaving, and she's been in for such a long time, from when she was very small. There is an element where you leave when it's been so all-consuming, because being on any of that.
Family. That's what we hear, isn't it? That soaps are like families.
Yes, I think it's true in my business, and you know this, that every time you go into a job, you kind of make a little family. Yeah. And, of course, if you're in a soap for a long time, then you get very solid with that family, and I think that's what happens.
And the same, presumably, for when you're doing a play, actually, because you become very tight-knit doing that as well, don't you?
And Strictly, too. When you think about it, because when you did Strictly, which was, what, 2011, and so the difference between being in that show, imagine if, you know, EastEnders back in the 1980s, we had all the social media back then. I mean, you were all across the tabloids back then, but that was it, wasn't it? There wasn't the focus from punters, no.
Instagram,
whereas being in Strictly, which is another huge show, obviously the nation's favourite, did you find a difference? Was it like being back in that EastEnders bubble again?
Well, I was kind of scared to do it. They asked me, it took about 3 times before I said yes, because I thought, you know, there's people watching you the whole time, not just when you're dancing, but when you're rehearsing. You know, there's cameras on you and seeing everything every time you fail to do something or you get cross with yourself. There they are all the time. And actually, I loved it. It was like having your best friend sort of chatting to you, or you could sort of look at the camera and go, it's not going very well.